Lots of students give me comments like this from Jam here, saying so much better than that dread Bruff ting. And I don't think that's really fair or the best way for you to look at our videos. For example, um, Ramatullah here asked me if he should start the writing question with two adjectives. And I know that that's something that Mr. Bruff recommends. It's a good idea. And so I point it out here. Um, so we're not really in competition. Mr. Bruff's got dozens of guides and he earns a living from them, but I'm still a full-time teacher and I publish my guides for a different reason. And this is the reason right here. My guide is aimed at you getting 100%. I genuinely think that most students could get level 7, 8 or 9. And in my guide I try to make clear exactly why that is. Now, I started writing my guide for my own students at school, and I'm sure I'd make a lot more money if I aimed my guide at everybody like Mr. Bruff does. His is just to GCSE English language. So really, Mr. Bruff and I are teaching in two slightly different ways. Let's open up his guide and take a look at what's inside. Okay, the first thing you should notice is I have bought this guide because I wanted to see if there was any point in me writing mine. You know, if I was just going to repeat everything that was in Mr. Bruff's guide, well, I'd tell my kids to buy his, wouldn't I? So the biggest difference between our two guides that I can point out to you is that his is 152 pages long, and in those 152 pages, he wants to make you quite secure in what's in each question. And I think that's enough to get to level 7. If you contrast that to my guide, there's 283 pages there because I want to make sure everybody can understand what 100% looks like. And I use many, many more examples to try and make that clear to you. So one of the ways I can make that obvious to you is by looking at the contents page. So let's imagine we're looking at the writing. One of your options is to write a short story. And I give you models plus explanations of 3 different types. One is a story as a monologue, another is a story about your childhood, another is a story written from the news. And there's a lot less in the contents page in Mr. Bruff's guide, as you can see, but he gives one short story in this section here, and it's a short story that's easier for you to write. So if you are thinking that you never get beyond a level 7, then actually this is a really good story to look at. It's much closer to the kind of writing that you would be able to do. But if you want higher level, it would help to have my guide as well. Similarly, in the persuasive writing section down here, Mr. Bruff does a really cool satire on why students shouldn't wear school uniform. If we contrast that with my guide, I show you how to do some travel writing here. I show you some persuasive writing here. I show you how to write to advise. And I give you lots of other examples of how to write in the non-fiction style. Interestingly, I deliberately didn't put any satire in there. Satire is a really good technique, but when I read Mr. Bruff's guide, I thought, actually, you've done this really well, Mr. Bruff. It would be wrong of me just to try and do the same as you. Wouldn't it be better if students bought both guides? You know, why would I suggest buying both guides is a good idea? Well, reason number one is they're both priced at $3.99, which is pretty much cheaper than a McDonald's Happy Meal. Or you don't call them Happy Meals, do you? I've no idea. Anyway, it's damn cheap. So for $3.99 times 2, for £8, you'll get quality teaching from Mr. Bruff and from me. You'd pay £25 to £30 just for 1 hour with an English tutor. So what value that is, you could keep going back to the guides and learning more and more. Another great reason to buy both is, let's say you're on a level 5 at the minute and you want to get better. If you read Mr. Bruff's guide first to secure your knowledge, and then read my guide afterwards to extend it, you'd get better and better. And so for some of you, it might make sense to read Mr. Bruff's guide first. If you're already on a 7 and you want to get 8 and 9, you'd think, oh, I'll just buy Mr Salles' guide, but not necessarily, because we both give you slightly different advice. Now, some students find that really confusing, but think of it another way. Imagine having two teachers teaching the same topic. It often helps to get a slightly different explanation, because that forces you to think through what you actually know and what you actually can explain. And there is an actual name for this. So scientists who study learning and memory, cognitive scientists, call it cognitive dissonance. And that's when you think you know something and then something new information comes along to challenge it, and you're no longer certain about what you knew. And so although that state is quite uncomfortable, when you delve into it, you suddenly gain much greater understanding. And I think having two guides like this will help most. I'll just give you a really small example. Mr Bruff advises you to spend 15 minutes reading the paper before you start answering it. And I tell you to do the absolute opposite. Start answering without reading. Now, you need to read both bits of advice for it to make sense to you and decide which one will work best. And that's the real advantage of having the two guides. It will make you question what you think you know, but only to make you more certain at the end. You'll come up with an answer that you're really happy with. Now, of course, the other guide, and probably the biggest selling guide on the market really, is the CGP guide. Should you buy that? Well, yes, do. Buy that as well. Again, it's ridiculously cheap, although a bit more expensive than mine and Mr Bruff's. What's really useful in this guide that Mr Bruff and I don't really give you is lots of answers to exam questions. So if we look at the end of the book, it has sample exams with graded answers. Now, personally, I don't find that as useful because these answers aren't real answers that students have done. They're done by teachers pretending to be students. And I think actually a better way of revising those for my students is when I make videos on them. So you'll see videos where I've given sample answers, and Mr Bruff does the same with his videos. However, videos take time to watch, don't they? Whereas a guide, reading on paper, is much quicker. So you might prefer to have a look at this section of the guide. And again, for under £5, you've got nothing to lose. And if you put all three guides together, the cost is still only half an hour with an English tutor. So I hope I've persuaded you. The best guides to get are all three, and then try them out. Become an expert really quickly by comparing the different advice. So if I've persuaded you to have a look at any of the guides online, follow the links below down here in the description to the video, and get revising. If you'd like any more videos, don't forget to subscribe.